And in this mindset, which I think are so many parallels to what is going on in our society through a lot of the activist movements, gender ideology and race theories and anti-colonization. And it just seems to be like almost a negativity and aggression toward institutions, primary institutions of life, family, church, government, the military, law, corporations, and it's seeping into all aspects of society. And one of the things in our conversations that I've noticed is that sometimes people are really mean that are in this ideology. It's almost like their identity is into tearing somebody down and humiliating them or shaming them or canceling them. And why don't you talk a little bit about what goes in the mind of somebody who has adopted this nihilistic or tear down the system mindset? Like, how does it make you feel when you're doing this and hurting somebody so profoundly?
It's fundamentally a mistrust or a distrust. And that comes out of a fear of being basically kicked off of the throne of your ability to control your life and be a good person. You start to view these things as obstacles to your personal virtue. Anything that can assert authority over you, basically, is to be not trusted. And sometimes that's fine. Sometimes that's true. But in a lot of ways, it's just the overreaction to that. All of it should be not trusted is the overreaction. Anything, any source of power or authority, like I said, is going to be inherently corrupted. And you, as the one who's going to change it for the better, because you want to be the protagonist in your own story, obviously, you're going to feel like you're obligated to fight against it, to tear it down. And just the constant just tearing of those structures, those hierarchies of power and authority down is the best way to be a good person, basically.
And when you do that, and you're tearing down what you look at as a system of oppression or something that's flawed, and you're causing pain, what happens internally? Are you feeling positive about what you're doing, irrespective of what other people are going through and the relational destruction that you're causing of people that once were friends or siblings or parents or teachers?
You relate it to the concept of justice very strongly. So even if you are hurting someone, you're doing so because it's the right thing to do, because they represent or they're caught up in or they represent in some way the system which oppresses this or that group. Or a very powerful one I find is that of the authority of the parents over the children. And then we can kind of tend to multiply that out into other areas of social and political life. And, you start to just feel that, just like in the justice system, there's always a winner and a loser in a sense when justice is done. One person gets, amelioration from some type of victimhood, they get compensated, and another side gets penalized, which hurts in some sense. And so when you're carrying out justice, it's really not a bad thing that someone is hurt by it. It's actually a good thing, because that is how you met out that justice and correct the system in some sense, which is totally valid on its own grounds, in terms of the concept of justice. But the over application of that into all instances of your personal life can become kind of like a justice drug. You're hooked on that feeling of meting out justice because your view is how you look at the world is right. And in order to be a good person, you would obviously need to pursue that.
Yeah, John McWhorter wrote a book on racism, and I don't remember the name, it was Race, Religion. I read the book, and he really emphasizes the point that a lot of the social justice warriors that are most active and the most vocal, he ascribes the word the elect. They look at themselves as they're the elect. They're the chosen one to fight racism. And you see the same philosophy being played out with the new queer LGBTQ, with emphasis on queer movement, that we are going to help the marginalized. It's like, I'm the one that's called to do this. And there's almost like an ideology that, if I don't do it, nobody will, but I'm going to be the ally, this allyship, whether it's the Black community, whether it's the queer community, whether it's, really radical feminists, because in some ways I understand feminism and I have a family with very strong women. And, but sometimes it's just so over the top of tearing down everything to do with masculinity. And a young boy where he's, afraid to have a sexual impulse because of, the Me Too movement, and it manifests itself in society in ways that are too over the top, is you're
Right.
suggesting. One of the things I just talked to you that really impacted me when we were having some dialogue is because I just was like, why are people so mean? Like, you're a racist, cancel you. And what is it in the subconscious of this aggressive social justice movement that's, instead of like reasoning with somebody, hey, you're hurting somebody's feelings when you say it like this. Can you like reconsider, because the effect of your words have power. You might have hurt somebody's feelings, and win somebody over to in a nuanced way, to influence them to be more mindful of what is a racist comment or things like that. But instead, there's been a posture of brutal attack, and I don't know how helpful that is in the long term, but you had said something about, but it feels so good to tear someone down in the moment. There's something in our id. Can you talk about, there's something going on, whether it's the support from the groupthink, or what satisfaction do you get just destroying another human being and burying them, because they have a different ideology or they say a stupid comment?
It's related to that concept of what you really feel you're doing is meting out justice. So it doesn't matter so much if you are hurting them, because it's just to make them feel bad and ashamed and things like that.
It's really narcissistic in the sense it makes you the highest authority of what justice really is, versus justice being outside of one's own mind and our own thoughts, that there is a creator that is ultimately governs the affairs of men, but it almost makes you God in a way that, and I'm the arbiter of all truth, and I'm the one that's going to, make that which is wrong right, and if
I would say that they're speaking maybe under the notion that they're supporting that higher good.
Right.
But a real concept of justice, if there's a real concept of justice to be had, it has to include everybody. As soon as you start suggesting that certain people should be excluded from the concept of justice, because justice it should be contextual. It should be a agglomeration of everybody to, consign and conform themselves to this mutual respect type of state where everyone is really an individual and everyone has an equal ability to contribute to what is true and good, instead of one person having more or less ability to be considered in that respect based on where you think they fall on, a social hierarchy of maybe oppressor or oppressed or any other type of thing like that. So if you're meting out justice, it's basically a way to get that good feeling. You don't want to allow the other person their equal representation. So I'm sorry, what was the original question?
Well, just the aspect of justice, and makes you the highest authority, the arbiter of all truth,
yes.
And the narcissism.
You're saying why it makes you feel good.
Yeah, that was yes. Why does it make you feel good?
Well, it makes you feel good because you get to feel morally and intellectually superior, which is not. It's certainly not just a problem with, people on the left or any one group in particular. This is a problem we all struggle with. It's very tempting to want to feel morally and intellectually superior, especially because we've kind of blurred the lines of like economic superiority, which was, traditionally, if you were, your higher status was based on your wealth. And we've kind of, shut that down for, I would say both good reasons and bad reasons. There are good consequences to that and bad consequences to that. One of the bad consequences to that is that we still want validation. And so we're going to shift it somewhere else. And where we've shifted it, with the access to technology and social media and everything's at everyone's fingertips, the arms race is really on for intellectual superiority, because anyone can participate, on a more or less equal platform, at least in first world country like the United States. So it's now the competition where once, how we approached business dealings, now we're starting to port that into our personal dealings with just personal relationships. And I think that's a very denigrating basis for personal relationships. I mean, and that it just comes up a lot. It's an aspect of being able to control the other person in some sense.
It seems like there's an element of, as you're talking about, it was originally economic, and the Marxist theory of the bourgeois and the proletariat, the class struggle, has pivoted and shifted into, some would say, cultural Marxism of the oppressor and oppressed, the same bourgeois proletariat of those that are white versus black, or heterosexual versus queer, or male and female. And we're putting everybody into this dialectic group and class struggle and cultural struggle. And it seems like, the intellectuals and those that aren't, those.
Yeah.
So it is, I think that goes along with what you're saying in terms of the pivot versus just the economic aspects.
Yeah.
It's now filtered into all levels of society.
Right. And if you're intellectually superior, then you would naturally feel that you have more of an ability to speak for everybody.
Well,
and I'm not saying I'm immune to that,
Well, Scott,
I'm sitting here trying to speak for everybody, but
yeah, you can't.
Right.